Stay tuned. Coming up, we put the shoe on the other foot, as I am interviewed by Chris Crawford, a firefighter with the Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania Fire Department and a public administration major at Point Park University. Chris was writing a paper on firefighter training for his Applications of Fire Research class and asked to interview me about how to ensure firefighters are properly prepared for the job with consideration for what some might refer to as non-realistic conditions during controlled burn evolutions. Hello and welcome to the Situational Awareness Matters Show, episode 358. I'm your host, Rich Gassaway. The purpose of this show is to improve situational awareness and decision-making for individuals and teams who work in high-risk, high-consequence, time-compressed environments with changing conditions. The SA Matters mission is simple. We want to help you see the bad things coming in time to prevent bad outcomes. Today's feature segment is sponsored by Gassaway Virtual Training. There are 33 online training programs for you to choose from. Some of the programs are live events presented virtually with interaction and Q&A, and some are pre-recorded programs. To learn more, visit the samatters.com website and click on the Virtual Training tab. Okay, let's jump into today's feature segment as we put the shoe on the other foot. And I am interviewed by Chris Crawford, a firefighter from the Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania Fire Department and a public administration major at Point Park University. Chris was writing a paper on firefighter training for his Applications of Fire Research class, and he reached out to me and asked if he could interview me about how to ensure that firefighters are properly prepared for the job with consideration for what some might refer to as non-realistic conditions during controlled burn evolutions. Now, this episode is a flashback to one that was originally recorded in 2016 before we were doing episodes on video. So this interview is audio only. All right, so I'm with Chris Crawford, a firefighter with the Beaver Falls Fire Department, and Chris had attended a class that I had taught at the Community College of Beaver County. I actually attended a couple classes, but this particular class was one that I did that is called Training for Failure, Why We Have to Change the Way Firefighters are Trained. And Chris does some training with his department and some training with the state of Pennsylvania, and he's doing a paper for his class at Point Park University in his public administration / fire administration class, and contacted me about having a discussion that is on the topic of his paper. So, Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Let's start by talking about the class that you guys attended, and some of the takeaways that you guys got from that. And maybe how that had inspired some things that you're doing different in your training. So just, it kind of gives us a framework where you're coming from.
Well, I think that the biggest thing that we took away from it was, when we do burn classes, we make the decisions for all the students. So in the real world, whenever they're faced with it, they don't have an instructor, and sometimes they may not have a chief or captain or whatever beside them to make the decisions. So we have, since taking that class, we have changed the way that we do our classes, and we let the students make the entire all the decisions for the class. So,
well, before you tell me what you're doing now, let's back up and tell the listeners, when you said you used to make the decisions for the students, talk me through that, the old way of doing it, and then we'll get to the new way you do it.
Well, the old way was, okay, here's a fire in such and such room. On the second floor, we want you to take that red 1 3/4 line up the interior steps, down the hallway, and just put the fire. Well, don't put the fire all the way out. Squirt it a little bit and let it burn so we can get it burning again.
Okay.
Whereas they actually need to put the fire out.
Mm-hmm. And from the class, you learned that I mean, what you just described is probably about the way almost everybody that's going to be listening has had their training, and they're going to say, "So, what's the problem? I missed the problem. So what's the problem with that?"
Well, the problem is in the real world they're not faced with 3 or 4 skids in a burn building when they pull up to a house. They may need to pull a 2.5. They may need to pull a step gun. If they're just used to pulling an 1 3/4, then that's their mindset. They're going to continue to pull an 1 3/4 for a fire that is much bigger than what that 1 3/4 can handle.
Mm-hmm. And you were telling me before we started recording that your old way of doing it, the instructors were pretty much driving the decision making of go or no go, and the instructors were driving the decisions of what size hose line would be taken in to attack the fire. In your old way of doing it, right?
Right.
And so what I had suggested to you guys in the class was to make a shift in how you teach and to start teaching by asking questions instead of by telling your students what to do. And lo and behold, as I recall, I remember your chief saying the class was like on a Tuesday or something like that, and he said, "Hey, we're doing live burns this coming weekend." Were you part of those live burns?
I believe I was, yes.
Yeah, because he ended up taking a class that I taught in Indiana, a week-long class on leadership. And he came out for that class, and he said, "Hey," he says, "let me tell you how that went." And I said, "Yeah, how'd that go when you did your live fire burn?" He said it was different than anything we'd ever done. It was the best training we'd ever done. I couldn't believe how fundamentally different everything was when we stopped telling everybody what to do and started asking questions. So is that what you guys have done? Started asking questions?
That's what we've done, and that's what we continue to do. It's been at least 3-4 years now. We've done it since then, and it seems to be very well received among all the instructors and the students.
So I'm on the engine, and I'm there to do the training, and you're the instructor. And you're gonna light a fire up inside the burn building, and I got my crew. And normally how it would go is the instructor would come to the front door and say, "Okay, you guys ready?" And we'd say, "Yeah, we're ready." And you'd say, "Okay, let's go." You don't do that anymore?
We don't do that anymore.
What do you do?
We make them make the decisions. If they want to hit it from the yard, they hit it from the yard. If they want to go get it, they go get it. We don't let them do it if we feel that something's unsafe. We don't let them go into harm's way. Mm-hmm. But we let them pull whatever line off the rig they want to pull, whatever length line they want to pull, whatever nozzle they want to pull. All the decisions are solely the students.
Hmm. And I would assume that the first time you guys did that your students were not used to having the latitude of making their own decisions. Were they skeptical? Were they scratching their head? Were they saying, "Oh, what are you trying to do here? You trying to trick me?" Were they skeptic?
There was probably a good mix of some yes, some no.
Okay.
We had some that had never been in a burn before, so
okay,
they were just, they were doing what they do. But the ones that had been in burn classes with us, it was an adjustment for the instructors as well. But the students, for the most part, they actually kind of embraced it and went with it. They really liked it.
Yeah, I bet they did. But because they want to learn how to. Not only they want to learn how to, hopefully, want to learn how to do the hands-on stuff, but they also want to learn how to make the right decisions at the right time for the right reason that's going to save them and keep them safe or safer. And you guys are giving them the green light to do that. All you're doing is asking them the questions that are setting up. They actually have to think, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that change things? I love it. I absolutely love it.
It makes it. It makes it a lot more fun to. Excuse me. It makes it a lot more fun to do that. It really does.
Yeah.
it gets them involved. It makes them kind of feel like their opinion matters, because it really does. I mean, it's their job, it's their lives. So if they don't feel comfortable doing something, then we don't make them do it.
Now, I bet you, when you guys as the instructors, I bet when you leave for the day, I bet you have a different feeling that you created smart firefighters because they can make their own decisions.
Yeah, we can go with that.
Yeah, that's how I felt after I started, learning how to do that, and unfortunately, it came very, very, very late in my career that I learned this stuff. But it fundamentally changed the way I look at things. So we were talking off mic, about as an instructor, some things that you guys do, or we do, I don't say you guys, we do in the fire service as far as live fire training. There's still some concerns there, even though you're making the firefighters better at making their own decisions. There's still some concerns there that the live fire events that we're doing in training aren't necessarily as real or realistic as real fire events. So kind of frame up for me what the concern is there.
Well, it's actually more for my paper. I mean, we kind of talk amongst ourselves as instructors as well, but the problem is we're teaching students how to fight a fire that contains 3-4 skids, some straw, maybe some cardboard, where the fires that they're actually responding to are nowhere near 3-4 skids, some straw, and some cardboard. There's couches, chairs, plastics, everything that comes along with all the furnishings of the house now, and we're not able to show them exactly why we're telling them not to do certain things. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So we're now telling them, because whenever I was young in the fire service, the terms as far as ventilation were, vent early, vent often, vent for life, things like that. Whereas now we're saying don't do that right away. You need to be a lot more coordinated with it, and we're not showing why. We are merely just explaining that to them. And from what I see with the younger kids, they need to know why. You can't just tell them, hey, don't do this. And then when they say why, you just say, well, because that's what I'm telling you. We need to be able to show them why. Am I making sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you've been in the fire service for 17 years. So, 17 years ago, pre-1403, we burned some different things that was able to show different kinds of smoke and different kinds of fire. And 1403 certainly has provided some limitations there. But, arguably, it was needed. There was, there were plenty of documented cases of burn practices that were not, certainly not safe. I mean, firefighters were getting hurt, getting burned, and that drove, in part, the creation of the standard that said we need to have a universal way in which this live fire training is conducted. Now, as they create the standard, it creates some limitations. Some, on one end, would argue those limitations have made teaching firefighting very unrealistic. And on the other end, people would say firefighters who get their training now get in a safer environment than they ever did before. And to that extent, it's good, because we shouldn't be burning firefighters as they're learning how to do their skills. And you think about how soldiers are trained. There's even learning how to be a soldier. You're limited as to what you're seeing as far as true battle conditions. You're not there where bombs are going off and IEDs are going off, and they can simulate things, but it's too dangerous to have the real ordnance present. So there's a certain amount of simulation, be it visual simulation or mental simulation, that is necessary. That is the replacement of the real world, and that I guess that's some of what you're seeing when you're burning pallets and hay, is you're not seeing the real deal.
Right.
And so your concern is, how do we have them see the smoke and the fire of what they're really going to see when they're not seeing it in training?
Yeah, the real question, what I'm trying to ask is how can we incorporate fire dynamics in demonstrations to show the students what to expect versus just lecturing them?
Sure. Well, there's some. In addition to a lecture, there are certainly some really good videos out there created by NIST and UL, and then even you can see some quality videos on YouTube as well, showing good examples and bad examples. And so instead of, when you say lecture, it seems to connotate that a person is standing in front of a room with maybe a PowerPoint going slide, slide, slide. That's what I see as lecture. There's some visual examples that can be used as well to allow them to see this dynamic. And if you're seeing it on video, is it exactly the same as seeing it live? No, but it's pretty darn close. I mean, smoke is smoke and fire, and the way the smoke and fire moves dynamically through a building set up to demonstrate that is not going to be too far off as to what you would do in a burn building, if you could burn other materials in the burn building. So there's a way for them to be able to see that. You certainly could also demonstrate it in a burn building if the students are not in the building. With materials, as long as the students are in a position of safety, they can see what it's like to have that dynamic smoke movement and open doors, open windows, closed doors, closed windows, show the movement of the smoke, the fire through different parts of the building. So there is ways for them to see it. As far as like smoke conditions, when I was a newer firefighter, and I'm not proud of saying this, but when I was a newer firefighter, they used to throw furniture, car tires, diesel fuel, all kinds of stuff on there to give us the heat and the smoke condition that they would say was realistic. Well, truly, in today's fire environment, we don't want firefighters in those environments because of the potential for a flashover of those decomposing hydrocarbons and the speed at which that happens. When they're in that environment, they shouldn't be in that environment. And if we're wanting to simulate an environment for them to be in there to see what it's like to be in the real environment, we might be creating an environment that we wouldn't want them to be in anyhow. We would want them to reset that fire, or as you say, knock it down from the outside, or do something to vent and let some of the heat and gases out that would maybe not lead to a flashover. I'm very cautious, as you know, about sending firefighters into these simulated pre-flashover environments, zero visibility, blacking somebody's hood out and sending them in on a fire attack or on a search because you're trying to simulate zero visibility environment, to me is crazy, because then you're going to have them show up at a real fire and they're going to crawl right into a zero visibility fire with a heavy black smoke down to the floor and see nothing wrong with it because they're doing exactly what we've told them to do in training. So to the extent that 1403, some would say, has, made it unrealistic, it is in some respects forcing us to look at how we do our training and perhaps making adjustments in the training to fit the modern content and heat, the heat that's going to come off of modern contents inside of a structure. I'll pause, let you talk.
That makes sense. That makes sense, and I'm definitely a little familiar with how things were back then. My dad was in the fire department for 20 years, so I've seen the diesel fuel in a pressurized water can to get the fire burning and stuff like that. So I understand 1403, and I'm not necessarily one of those ones that disagrees with it. I think it has its place, and we shouldn't be sending firefighters into a pitch black room that's a mere second or two from flashing over. That's definitely not what I'm wanting to do. I don't want to place anybody in harm's way, myself, students, fellow instructors, anybody.
Mm-hmm.
But
what's your ideas? What is it that you're looking to explore doing, and what's inspiring you to maybe want to see a change in a burn standard, or if that's the direction that this is going?
Kind of, sort of. I would like to be able to do some type of live demonstration that shows the students of the class, shows the fire dynamics that we're showing them videos of and explaining them to them. So the main question is, or I guess the question that I have is, are lectures on fire? Do you think lectures on fire dynamics are enough to prepare firefighters for what they're going to see on a Tuesday afternoon?
No, I don't think lectures are ever enough. No matter what the topic, if whatever we're lecturing is eventually going to end up on the fire ground. In other words, what we're teaching is going to end up being a fire ground skill set. Then the lecture always has to transition into a hands-on activity and an observation or participation in doing something hands-on. The lecture only teaches the cognitive. It doesn't teach the muscle movement or the kinesthetic, and the lecture doesn't even teach the critical thinking and decision-making and resilient problem-solving that you guys have learned to build into your training evolutions. That doesn't come from the lecture. That comes from being out on the training ground and having them look at dynamic conditions and challenge them with their decisions, and being able to either see that in video or see it live is essential. I mean, they're going to have to see this. You can't lecture them on what fire behavior is and then take them out and burn pallets and hay and say, yeah, this is it. This is going to be the smoke that you're going to see. This is going to be how the color and the volume and the velocity and the density of the smoke that you're going to see and the heat generation. No, it's not. And to say that it is, in fact, we should very, very much say this is not at all what you're going to see, so that they're not underprepared for what they're going to see when they truly get there and have all those plastics creating a very, very different environment.
The first question I asked you kind of sort of rolled right into the second one, so I don't have to ask that one. There's only one more question.
Okay.
But like I said earlier, during live burns, instructors are teaching students how to fight a fire with a few wooden pallets and some straw, maybe some cardboard.
Mm-hmm.
But then, once that class is over, they're responding to fires that are completely different than what they were just trained. Mm-hmm. So, my question to you is, do you feel that instructors may be setting their students up for failure on the real fire ground because we're not able to demonstrate the behaviors of the fires they're going to be responding to?
I think there's a risk of that. Whenever somebody's inside and they're fighting a fire in a training environment, if they have in their mind well, I was able to be successful here, so now I am completely, fully prepared to fight real fires. If they're coming out of those hay and pallet fires, high-fiving and backslapping and saying, "Man, I got it figured out. I'm ready for structural firefighting because I've seen it, and I've lived it." I think if they come out thinking that, I think the instructors have done them a disservice by if those students think that training environment was a realistic environment. There are, I don't know if you all have access to the flashover trainers that some organizations have access to. Do you all have access to that?
I think so. There's a couple local fire academies that have them around us.
Okay, so just in the previous 2 episodes, 102 and 103, I interviewed a firefighter that was caught in a residential dwelling flashover, and he was inside this fire with another firefighter searching, and as he looked up, he saw these fingerlings of flames coming across the smoke, and as he saw these fingerlings of flames coming across the smoke, high marks to him for his good situational awareness. He immediately hearkened back the environment that he had seen of the same thing in the flashover simulator as the indicator of the pending flashover, and he turned to his partner and said, we gotta go, now let's go. And they turned and they headed out from where they were. Now, they only made it to the front door, and the other guy, and when it flashed over, and they literally had their hand on the door to go out, when the flashover occurred, it burned his helmet, it burned his gear, burned his shoulders through his gear, burned his air pack, burned him. But had he not had that flashover training that was much more realistic than a few pallets and some hay, where he was able to observe these clues and cues of pending flashover, and then look up and see it and immediately know what it meant and immediately make the decision, they'd have got killed. If he stayed in there for just 5 more seconds, they'd have got killed. Because when that flashed over, they were there at the front door, and he literally fell out the front door onto the front porch, and the engine crew was right there with a hose line to put him out. He was on fire. That's how close he came. So those types of props are very good at allowing us to see different things inside of a fire than what you would see, in a burn building with pallets and hay, and very different than what you would see in a building that's using propane and in a smoke machine. The smoke machine is going to make just one kind of smoke. Maybe the day will come when somebody, and maybe it already has happened, I don't know, somebody will invent a smoke machine that'll make darker smoke, gray smoke, different colored smoke, brown smoke, so that firefighters can see something more than theatrical smoke emitting from a building, because the different smokes, mean different things. And, as far as I know, it might exist, but, I'll just play dumb and say I don't know that it does. But, the more the firefighters are able to see these things, it doesn't always have to be boots on the ground at the training center. They can see these things in simulation. They can see these things in video and still be learning. Although what I would say is get those simulations and those videos out onto the training ground. In other words, you can show it to them in the classroom, but then get those videos and those simulations out on the training ground with their turnout gear on, with a building with smoke and fire in it that smells like smoke, and they see smoke, and they're using the simulations or the videos right there in real time on the training ground. That's a very, very different experience than just sitting at a desk in a classroom watching it.
You're really good at answering questions.
Well, thank you. I spend a lot of time doing research to try to make sure that what I'm sharing adds some value. Gets people scratching their heads and thinking and saying, "Yeah, there's some value in that for me." And that's what I hope people take away, and that they try it. I mean, if you're showing videos and simulations in a classroom, just get an iPad and take them out onto a training ground and watch how different it is for people when they got their turnout gear on, when the engine is running, when they smell diesel exhaust coming off the engine, when the lights are flashing, when they smell smoke, all these different stimulus that are happening, that are setting alarm bells off in their brain, and it's just a very, very, very different experience than doing it in a calm, quiet, sterile classroom. Very different.
Actually, while you were talking, we can do this off the record or on the record, whatever you decide. But you were talking about the type of smoke that comes from the pallets and the hay, which is that brownish, that weird brown looking color.
Mm-hmm.
But in a burn building, that's the smoke that we see. Where in a house fire, that means that color smoke means a completely different thing. That means that the fire is actually burning the structure, not just the contents.
That's right.
And I don't know if seeing that is going to make the students in the real world say, "Well, there's more skids," or if that's going to key them into, okay, we have extension into the walls or into the attic or something along those lines to kind of go that avenue.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's what I would suggest for people that are doing live fire training. And that is, it all starts with a size up. So you're sizing up the smoke and fire conditions, building construction, and decomposition of the building. Stop sizing up burn buildings and hay and pallet smoke. Stop doing that. There's little to no value in the real world in assessing the construction of a steel building that's designed not to fall down because you're burning in it. It's a burn building. Using simulation or photographs, absent, if you can't buy, a $79 Sims You Share packet or something like that, and you can't get an iPad. If you can't do that, you can use photographs, but, photographs don't show motion, and motion shows speed. And the speed of smoke movement and the speed of flame movement tell you something very important. So if you can use simulation at a burn building environment, no one should ever be sizing up a steel building that's designed to be burned in. Use the simulation and you have them size up a building from your town that you took a snapshot of and created the simulation for. So when they're walking around side 2, side 3, side 4, they're not walking around 4 sides of a burn building. They're walking around 4 sides of a lightweight construction house in the new subdivision in your town. And you use that simulation software and you create smoke conditions that you're not going to see in the burn building. And and then you either teach or ask them if they know already, if they've already had the class part of reading smoke and buildings, then you just ask them, what does this smoke mean? What does this color smoke mean? What could this be telling you? Where's this coming from? And what they're doing is, while they're walking around that burn building, they're literally looking at a simulated fire, which is putting them in an entirely different decision-making mindset. I'm not looking at a steel building. I'm looking at a lightweight wood-framed house built 2 years ago. And I should be concerned about flashover. And I should be concerned about collapse. At the burn building, they're never going to be concerned about it because you're never going to create the conditions that are going to lead to a flashover. And hopefully, unless your burn building is dilapidated, it's never going to collapse. So it's never going to be on their mind. And you need it on their mind. That's got to be part of what they're thinking about. And the simulation helps get that on their mind.
I really like that idea. I'm sure the others that I teach with will too. That's something we may have to look into doing. We actually have, I don't remember what the name of the software is, but we do have a simulator a computer-generated simulator. You take pictures of stuff in your area.
Yeah.
Yep. I never even thought about taking an iPad or a computer or something outside and just giving them all the cues that would be from a fire scene and try to see how things go as far as like reading conditions and everything.
Mm-hmm. Now you get them making decisions when they're looking at that. You're gonna up this game to a whole new level now, because they're no longer looking at a still building and looking at the smoke from pallets. They're looking at ordinary construction. They're looking at warehouses. They're looking at trailer homes, whatever kind of buildings you have in your town or their town. They're not looking at the burn building anymore. They're doing a dynamic assessment of even though it's simulation, it looks real. It's got real smoke and realistic smoke and realistic fire and different kinds of smoke conditions, indicating different kinds of things burning, different speeds and different densities, and that's going to drive good decision making. Hopefully they're going to look at one of those simulations you make and say, okay, my decision, no go, not going, not that, no way. Because I see heavy fire involvement heading toward a flashover and possibly even a collapse with that type of construction. So see, as soon as they utter those words, they're now thinking differently than they're ever going to be thinking at a steel burn building. They're never going to stand in front of your steel burn building and say, no, we're not going in because it might collapse.
Right. And you mentioned in classes before about, well, we even mentioned in this conversation about how the instructors were always telling the students, hey, we want to take this line, we want to take it here, whatever. And even if we didn't tell them, if we tell them in the beginning of the class, we want you to make the decision on what line you pull, we are maybe not necessarily verbalizing what we want them to do, but because of these little tiny fires, we're excuse me, we're essentially telling them you don't need a 2.5 to fight this fire. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but if they see that simulated fire and they see a bigger fire, you better hope they say, that ain't an 1 3/4 fire. That's a 2.5 fire. Look at that. I mean, you're showing the simulation with this flame coming out the window and. And they might say, well, in that fire, I would knock it down from the outside first, try to, cool it and, take the energy out of it and then make an entry. Heck, if you get them making those kind of decisions, they're probably making decisions they're not making on the training ground now. And what drove them to that decision were the clues and the cues and the indicators from conducting a dynamic assessment, a dynamic size up of a simulation that they walked around all four sides and saw. So they're seeing the clues and the cues that form their understanding, that allows them to predict the future, that drives the decision making. And there is the essence of the situational awareness classes that I teach. Your head spinning?
Yeah, it kind of is.
Yeah. That's good.
That's amazing information. Like, really,
it's good because I know that you'll take it and you'll use it. You're not just looking to get something to write a paper. Because the last time I was there, when Chief Stowe and you were in that class, I mean, you guys took that and you immediately put it to use like that weekend, and that's to me that's awesome because. How many times I think people just say, "Oh yeah, that's nice," or "We don't have time to do it that way. We don't have time to teach them how to make a decision." Really? Think about how crazy that sounds. You don't have time to teach them how to do it right, but you've got time to let them do it wrong.
Right.
I mean, that's crazy. When somebody says, "I don't have time to teach them how to do that," what they're saying is they don't know how to teach it. That's what they're saying, and I understand if they haven't been taught how to teach students how to form situational awareness and taught how to teach students how to make high-risk decisions dynamically in the moment. If they haven't been taught that, then they're going to find an excuse not to teach it. We don't have time to do that. We don't have the right conditions to do that. No, sorry. It doesn't take that much more time. We're talking adding 1 minute, 2 minutes to an evolution to teach somebody how to form SA and make a dynamic decision. Please, don't tell me you don't have time to do that. That's foolish. Well, did I give you enough for your paper?
I sure as hell hope so. What's on there? Yeah, I'm pretty sure you actually gave me a lot more than I thought you were going to. Which I'm glad I definitely decided to make the decision to talk to you, because it's not often that I'm speechless, and I'm pretty close to it. And I'm even relatively still new to the whole instructor thing. I've only been an instructor for 5-6 years, and a lot of the people that I'm teaching with have been instructors for 15, 20, longer years. So I'm still a new kid.
Yeah,
and I'm actually still with the group that I usually teach with. I am the new kid. I'm still the youngest one, and I'm still the newest one that's there. So.
And now that you've seen the light and drank my Kool-Aid, you have to go back to that seasoned group of instructors and say, hear me out, don't kill me and eat me, just hear me out. There might be a better way of doing it than the way that we've always done it.
Yeah, but they've embraced your thoughts before.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's going to take much to get them to embrace this too.
Good.
And especially this is definitely done after the interview, but I'd really like to try. I mean, I know how to find the podcast on here now, but if it's possible, I'd like to get a copy of it so I can play it for Chief and those guys, because I can guarantee you that the information that you gave me, Chief, he'll take the idea and he'll run with it.
Yeah, I know he's a very progressive thinker. I'm very impressed with him.
So, and the whole time you're talking, like, I'm sitting here thinking of, like, trying to pick, because I've known those guys most of my life, if not all my life. So trying to picture how they would perceive the information that you're giving me, and I'm pretty sure they're going to take it the same way that I did. Like, it's going to, like, that whatever the heck commercial that is, where the people's top of their heads blow off and that little purple poof of smoke. That's what it's going to do. That's what happened to me. So,
good stuff. Well, let's wrap up the recording here, and because we're at about 40 minutes, and I wanna keep the episode at a manageable pace. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk with you and to share some of my random rantings and ravings about how we're doing our fire training.
Thank you. It was very appreciated to get the opportunity to talk to you about it.
Thank you, Chris, for the opportunity to be interviewed. Since 2007, SA Matters instructors have helped more than 1,200 organizations and 87,000 individuals improve high-risk decision-making, including first responders, industrial workers, military personnel, business leaders, medical professionals, utility workers, highway workers, aviation workers, oil refinery operators, and more. If you or someone that you care about works in a high-risk, high-consequence decision-making environment, then we are here to help to improve their safety and survival, and to help them accomplish the most important mission of all, and that is to go home to the ones who love them. Since the start of the pandemic, I've had some amazing opportunities to present my programs on virtual platforms to groups ranging in size from 6 to 400, with recorded playbacks being viewed by more than 22,000 responders. Here's hoping the new year and the introduction of the COVID vaccine will reduce the number of cases and return us back to some form of normalcy for live, in-person training. As you'll see from this upcoming list of events, things are looking up. On February 6th and 7th, I'll be presenting 3 live in-person situation awareness programs, hopefully, at the Missouri Winter Fire School in Columbia, Missouri. February 8th and 10th, I'll be presenting 3, hopefully live and in-person, situational awareness programs for the Spring Fire Department in Texas. February 17th, I'll be facilitating the Minnesota Virtual Training Series featuring Dr. Chad Weinstein talking about fire service leadership from the inside out. On March 4th, I'll be facilitating a Minnesota virtual training series, this time featuring Brian Ward talking about barn boss leadership. On March 8th, I'll be presenting, hopefully live and in person, a situational awareness program for the National Electrical Testing Association Power Test Conference in Orlando, Florida. On March 16th, I'll be facilitating the Minnesota Virtual Training Series, this time featuring Fire Chief Alan Lewis, talking about recruitment and retention. On March 23 through 25, I'll be presenting, hopefully live and in person, 3 situational awareness programs for the Anchorage Fire Department in Anchorage, Alaska. Thank you to the organizations who have allowed me to offer your members virtual training, and special thanks to the 46 agencies who've postponed programs in 2020 and, like I am, are patiently waiting to be rescheduled. If you're interested in hosting a virtual program or a live event, just click on the Contact Us tab at the top of the SA Matters homepage and I will give you a call. Finally, remember to check out the show notes for how to subscribe to our newsletter and how to follow us on social media. There we share ideas about how to improve situational awareness, how to make better decisions under stress, and how to improve the skills of critical thinking and resilient problem solving. Well, that's it. Episode 358 of the Situational Awareness Matters show is complete. Thank you again to my guest, Chris Crawford. And thank you for sharing some of your valuable time with me today. I really appreciate your support of the SA Matters mission. Be safe out there, and may the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always.
You've been listening to the Situational Awareness Matters show with Dr. Richard Gasaway. If you're interested in learning more about situational awareness, human factors, and decision-making under stress, visit his website, samatters.com. If you're interested in booking Dr. Gasaway for a program, or if you would like to be a guest on his show, click the Contact Us tab at the top of the homepage.